Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, and Mike Clay back here on Fantasy Focus Football, and we are going to court. We've mentioned it. We're talking about it. We're going to set this segment up. Here's how it's going to work, okay? We've got a couple of different things based on your rankings. Mike, your 192 just recently came out. You had a whole bunch of guys that you're ranking there. First, how difficult is it for you to put all 192 players together?
I mean, we keep these updated year-round, our overall board, so not
all that difficult.
I mean, they're perfect. We know what they're going to finish in that order, 1 to 92. So I just look at the list of players and I say, oh, this is how they're going to finish, and then I list them in that order. So
yesterday I literally talked about how difficult it is to rank players in the top 100. Mike here, yeah, no big deal.
Just rank them how they're going to finish. It's not that hard. We've been over this, okay?
Jeez. All right. So here's what we are going to do. Mike is going to be the defense. Field and I are going to go back and forth being prosecutors, making our case. You're already on it. You're already on it. Just save it. Just save it. So, Field, we're going to start with you. I'm going to be the judge for this one. Where do you want to take Mike to task?
Well, can I just quickly?
Oh, hold on.
I will be the
I need you to.
Yeah, I need to.
Place your hand on this.
Thank you. I need to be sworn in.
Swear to the fantasy gods that you will tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
I don't swear to tell the truth, so.
No, I already know you're going to lie, so I'm not even going to do it for you. All right, Field, tee us up with the first argument.
Mike Clay, I ask you this. Do you or do you not have Derrick Henry, who has led the NFL in touches and 4 rushing attempts in 4 of the past 5 seasons, as the 24th overall player on your board?
I do.
And do you have Rachaad White, who was second in the NFL in touches last season, but you also trashed via Instagram DMs, is 25th overall on your board?
Hold on. I have to consult my attorney. I do.
So here's the debate. I have Derrick Henry as 17th overall on my board. I've got Rachaad White as 37th overall on my big board. Whoa. It's actually not that Mike and I have Rachaad White ranked super different in our running back rankings. It's that I view him as a very clearly different tier than Mike does. My primary concern, so the gap between those two players in your overall rankings is just, I think, it's just one spot, right? Whereas to me, it's a large gap. I view Derrick Henry as a much superior player in fantasy football this season. Derrick Henry, I think, will be the efficiency god in Baltimore, right? I don't care about how many catches he has. I don't care if he has 20. In prior years, that's been enough catches for him to be amongst the 3 best running backs in fantasy football. What I do care about is, does the team plan to rely on him heavily once again? That's why they signed him to this 2-year contract in Baltimore. And regardless of how reshuffled the Ravens' offensive line is, they added Derrick Henry to a Lamar Jackson-led offense where it becomes pick your poison. I think Derrick Henry is going to be a far more efficient player this year than he was last year and pile up about 10 to 12 rushing touchdowns. Gus Edwards amongst the league leaders in goal-to-go carries last year. Derrick Henry, no running back is better than finishing those drives than Derrick Henry.
Objection, hearsay.
I don't even know if that's accurate or not, but I like it.
I don't think so, but
my contention is just that, I think Rachaad White will have a lot of carries for the Bucs once again. Yeah. He was also incredibly involved as a receiver last season. He actually averaged 8.6 yards per catch. A lot of checkdowns in that offense led by Baker Mayfield. They drafted the player that I think can be the ideal pass-catching back in Bucky Irving. Probably the best pass-catching back along with Dylan Laube in last year's draft. Led the FBS in catches amongst running backs. I think he takes over enough of a workload from Rachaad White as a receiver that Rachaad White is amongst the regression candidates this year because, as you know, Mike, he is an inefficient runner. His volume was solid. I don't think his efficiency is going to be good enough this year to make up for what I believe will be a decrease in catches.
All right, prosecution rests. Defense.
All right, so let's just say this. You're talking about a guy who's 30 years old, in Derrick Henry, past his prime, old man by running back standards, who
be careful,
who was inferior to Rachaad White last season in fantasy production. Okay, last season Henry 16th in fantasy points per game. Rachaad White was 10th. Rachaad White's 25. He's still on the ascent in his career, and yet you're choosing the side of Derrick Henry, who's older and was worse last season. Last year, White, 64 catches, 549 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. Henry, 28 for 214 and 0 touchdowns. even if that's an 88-point fantasy point difference, right? So even if White drops off a little bit in his receiving, which isn't a guarantee, that is hearsay, okay, that he's going to lose some of that work. We don't know how good Bucky Irving is. He's a mid-round draft pick. We don't know that for sure.
We don't know how old Derrick Henry actually is. That's hearsay, 30?
No, that's
mid-20s.
That's facts. We're arguing with the facts. Let the record show that Derrick Henry is 30.
He's in his mid-20s. Yes.
He's in his he's in his early 30s.
Running back years, he's mid-20s.
But last year, look, Rachaad White, first at running back in snaps and routes, second in carries, eighth in targets, second in touches, fourth in yards last season. Both running backs had 9 top 12 weeks, so you can't even argue the upside with Derrick Henry. The fact is he's not nearly as involved in the passing game, even if White loses some of that. White's efficiency as a rusher was not great. There's room for improvement there, but he is effective as a pass catcher, the volume and the efficiency as well. So I'm going to take the player who was better last year and is on the ascent and is a very similar situation in Tampa Bay over an aging Derrick Henry.
Boy, it's tough for me as a judge in this one, but when I look at it, it's hard. It's hard. I feel bad. I don't feel bad, Mike. I'm going to go with Derrick Henry on this.
Thank you.
Here's the reason why. I agree with everything that Field is saying when it comes to the rushing touchdowns and efficiency. When you look at the way that they faced stacked boxes last year, I understand Derrick Henry was not as efficient. It's because he saw more than twice as many stacked boxes as Rachaad White. He had 104 touches with 8 or more defenders in the box. Rachaad White had 47.
You might have 7 of those touches this year, Derrick Henry.
So I think that this is a situation where he should have a much more efficient offensive line. He should not see as many stack boxes as last year. Because of that, the 12 rushing touchdowns that you project, which I already feel like is kind of a lot for you. You don't usually project double-digit touchdowns for a running back. I got to go with Derrick.
Yeah. By the way, the funny thing about this is actually have Henry one spot ahead of White. The argument is that they should be close together.
So this is what I want to do. Right. This is what I want to do. On the poll, Jackson, if we can, throw a poll up there on Twitter at Fantasy Focus. 4 options. Derrick Henry versus Rachaad White. Clearly Derrick Henry, barely Derrick Henry, clearly Rachaad White, barely Rachaad White. I mean, I can't say that this is
I would say it's barely Henry.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
You're saying it's clearly Henry.
Right.
I think it should be close.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to find out from Masses.
All right.
Mike has to pay my legal fees now, right?
Yes,
because
Mike does. That is exactly how these lawyer things work.
Daniel, your turn.
All right. Your Honor, my client Jaden Reed's ranking is too low. I currently have him ahead of teammate Christian Watson as wide receiver 31, with Watson as wide receiver 40. Michael Lester Clay has him as wide receiver 41, Christian Watson, and Jaden Reed as wide receiver 42. I think this is a travesty, and I'm going to tell you why. Couple reasons. One, I'm going to pull up my notes here. Couple reasons. In their 9 games together last year, 9 games together.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed had 101.8 fantasy points. Christian Watson had 101.3 fantasy points. They were almost identical when it came to fantasy production. Now, they got there in very different ways. Jaden Reed absolutely crushed it in the slot. He was top 5 in points via the slot during Christian Watson's healthy weeks. The thing that I stand on, for me, 7 of his final 8 games, he had at least 15 fantasy points. As a rookie, with Jordan Love under center being able to take over this Packers offense and become more efficient, when I look at what that is, wide receiver 10 over that stretch, wide receiver 10 over the final 8 games. The big thing for me, my biggest hang-up, is Christian Watson has missed 10 games through his first 2 seasons. And I am not in on a guy that has continued soft tissue injuries. When I look at this, Jaden Reed, to me, should be ranked ahead of Christian Watson, given the similar production that he had, given the fact that the offense is going to continue to grow, and I'm not worried on a game-to-game basis about whether or not Jaden Reed is potentially going to miss the week because of a soft tissue injury the way that I am with Christian Watson. I am being risk-averse here. Give me the guy that I saw absolutely dominate the second half of the season as a rookie. Jaden Reed should be ranked ahead of Christian Watson.
On advisement of counsel, I'll be pleading the 5th on this one. When it comes to Christian Watson, I'm unable to comment on this topic.
Okay.
We went back and forth last year about this, Mike. I'm sorry to bring you
all right.
Do you want to pass?
No, I will not. I will not pass. I'm going to ignore my counsel on this one.
That's a good one.
Look, I also looked at the games where those two played together, where the whole crew was available for the Packers last season.
The 9 games, 9 of the 17 that he could have played.
Yeah, full healthy games for Christian Watson. He had a 19% target share. Reed 15%. Romeo Dobbs actually 17% as well. That was a big drop. Actually, I say drop for Reed, but he wasn't that much higher even when Watson was out. Check this out. Last year, Jaden Reed super reliant on touchdowns last season. It's a number that will not sustain. He will not score 10 touchdowns again this season. He was 70th at receiver in snaps. That was with Watson missing all that time. 70th in snaps, 63rd in routes, 40th in targets, 35th in catches and yards, but 5th in touchdowns for a slot receiver. It's just not going to happen. We've seen this over and over again. I project that he'll pretty much cut that number in total this season. I like the player, but just he does not have a path to a high upside this season. Also, Christian Watson, he was not a full go last year when he was out there early on, and then he started to heat up right before the injury that ended his season. 5 for 94 and a touchdown, 7 for 71 and 2 touchdowns in those final 2 games before that major injury. So I have them ranked very closely, but Watson is substantially more upside. And we've already seen in the off-season activity so far that Watson is out there. Like, he's going to be the one. He's going to be on the field, by all accounts, with Dobbs and with Reed in the slot with Wicks worked in. So, for me, I still went the high ceiling with Watson.
So let me ask you guys this. Would you prefer the short and succinct ruling from me now? Because I have Packers wide receivers thoughts later in a second segment that we're going to do. Okay. I'm sorry, Daniel.
That's okay.
The defense wins the case here. Mike finally gets a W. I know it's been a while for you, so you get a W. Congratulations.
I'll
explain it more in just a little bit, but I thought both very compelling cases there, but more to come on that in just a little bit.
Jaden Reed's definitely listening to everything that you say.
Yes, he is.
Please be aware of that.
All right. EMD before now.
He has not yet, but it's
Not yet. It's coming.
All right, here we go. Down to Houston we go. We've talked about this one a little bit already, but let's talk about it even more. Stephon Diggs versus Nico Collins is the highest ranked Texans wide receiver. I am arguing on behalf of Stephon Diggs being ahead of Nico Collins.
Ooh.
I am going to make this largely about Stephon Diggs and what I think he is as a player, less about what I think Nico Collins is, because I have significant admiration for your client, Mr. Collins, and believe that he is absolutely worth every penny the Texans invested in him this offseason. I want to establish that before we get going here.
Sure.
I don't believe that Stephon Diggs is the player that we saw in the final 10 games of last regular season. I think that was about a situation that was just about at its boiling point, that eventually reached its boiling point, and that's why he was traded. I also know that over the past 4 seasons, no player has more catches than my client, Stephon Diggs. He's one of just 2 players in that time, along with Devontae Adams, a superstar we have tremendous reverence for. Who also has at least 100 catches each of those 4 seasons. I believe the Texans made this acquisition, which included trading away a 2025 second-round pick, and also included shortening the length of my client's contract from 2 years to 1 to make this a contract season. They did this move because they felt like they lacked a player who could chew up targets in the manner in which my client can. I do not believe that my client is bound for 170-ish targets, which is something I would have reasonably expected if he had stayed in Buffalo. I think, though, he could see closer to 130 to 135 targets, which would lead the team and result in Nico Collins having slightly fewer targets as well. While Nico Collins' biggest weeks will be bigger than my client Stephon Diggs' biggest weeks, I believe week in, week out, the far more stable option will be the volume-heavy Stephon Diggs.
All right, so
you better bring it.
yeah, so I think this one's pretty straightforward. Nico Collins versus Stephon Diggs. At this point in their career, Nico Collins is the better player. And you mentioned that.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about that, and here's
Really?
why. You said part of it. I mean, they made it a 1-year deal in Houston. He's on a 1-year deal at age 30. Yeah. He's had a falling out now with Minnesota. He's divorced now from Buffalo with Josh Allen, one of the best situations in the NFL. And what's to say it's not going to happen again in Houston?
Because it's year one, and this is
it's year one. But what happens when he's not getting targets? What happens when he's not getting the target share that he was getting? I disagree.
Why would they trade for him then? I guess what I would say is if Houston is forecasting the demise already, why would they trade for him?
why would Buffalo get rid of their number one and go with a rookie and sign Curtis Samuel and go with Khalil Shakir?
Because the path had run its course.
Yeah, and that happened now in 2 other places. Why would it not happen in Houston?
Because it'll happen later in Houston. That's what I'm saying.
Not gonna be
We're not
this
doing a
year.
dynasty show.
I think it might
here.
happen soon. I think it might happen soon with because the other side of it is Nico Collins. He got paid too. They signed him to be their number one for the long term. And check this out. This one surprised me when I was working on my defense. Stephon Diggs had 52 more targets than Nico Collins last year. He had 114 fewer yards than Nico Collins last season and the same number of touchdowns. Diggs' efficiency plummeted last year with one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Nico Collins soared, had a great connection with C.J. Stroud. I don't think that changes. And Collins' efficiency was outstanding last year. He could actually lose some of that and still be terrific. So I stand by Nico Collins. I think at this point he is the better player over Diggs, who's, again, age 30. Nico Collins is age 25. I'll take the ascending talent here, no doubt about it.
This is really difficult because, and I think Field,
good
you
arguments
said
here.
this. Yeah, it is very. Both of these
All of them
are
are.
really good arguments.
Yeah, these.
This is interesting. I think you had mentioned this. I think it was last week, Field, where you might be more on a player that's going to get you 7 for 99 rather than a guy that's going to get you 5 for 125,
Yes.
right? Nico Collins is that guy that can potentially take the top off the defense and have these game-winning weeks. But like you said with Stephon Diggs, he's not going to have potentially, like that target share is just going to be bigger.
Will it though? Is he?
Oh, it's tough. I
Than
think-
Nico?
Yes.
I don't know how to.
Yes. Put that on the board too.
I've got Nico Collins ranked just ahead of Stephon Diggs, but everything that you just said, Field, makes me pause a little bit because even though I love Nico Collins, to your point, why trade for a guy if you're not going to feature him in this offense? I mean, what's the purpose?
Players that change teams tend to drop off in production. I mean,
or
that's
sometimes they go up in production.
It's pretty rare. I mean, it's not
Really?
It's not as often.
That's
no.
Christian Kirk what it's like to go from.
Well, there's always some exceptions, but most of the time it's a sign of a dip. So I don't know. I'm not at this point in his career. I don't feel like, especially after what we saw late last season. I disagree. I want the ascending talent.
Wow,
here.
do you hear Mike is so like he is so like okay with like I'm gonna go with Nico Collins because of it. I'm sorry, Field.
It's okay. Hey, listen.
This is a tough one.
Everybody, Mike, now up 2-1. That's a little bit sickening.
you
Two
want to
really good conversations.
you want to hate on the defense. I get it.
All right, I got one. I'm gonna be
Hey,
quick about this.
facts are
Do one more
facts.
here.
We're gonna do one more. I'm gonna be
Love
quick.
it.
David Montgomery should not be ranked outside the top 25, Mike.
Finally, an easy case.
What
Wow.
are you doing?
Wow. I mean,
My
he does have a Detroit.
gosh.
Is that a?
This is the
Ageism,
problem.
Detroitism.
I think this is a Jahmyr Gibbs thing and not a David Montgomery thing, but we'll find out. Here's the thing. David Montgomery, despite only playing 14 games last year, finished as running back 17 in fantasy points and running back 14 in fantasy points per game. Over the final 8 games of the season, when Jahmyr Gibbs was the guy doing all the stuff that we were hoping he was eventually going to be able to do as a rookie, David Montgomery still running back 18. You look at what this Lions offensive line does. Frank Haley has put together an incredible offensive line, potentially the best in the NFL, if not easily top 3, Mike.
I think it's number 1.
I think it's number 1 as well. I appreciate you saying that so that it wasn't me.
Wait,
So Lions fans, stay off your back. Hank Fraley. You went.
I'm
Frank
sorry.
Haley.
Did I say Frank Haley? I'm sorry.
Former Eagles center.
Hank Fraley. Over the last 2 seasons, the Detroit Lions running backs have 47 rushing touchdowns. Most in the NFL. Second is the Dolphins with 38. They also lead all running backs in carries inside the 5 over that span. David Montgomery finished top 5 in carries inside the 5. This rushing touchdown production is not going to go anywhere. They have the perfect 2-headed attack at the running back position. I do not think it is at all unlikely that a three-peat will happen to have 2 Detroit Lions running backs finish inside the top 25. I've got Montgomery at running back 19. You've got him at running back 26. What the heck is wrong with you, Mike Clay?
Objection, badgering me.
The witness. Yes, that's exactly. I am badgering
Defense,
you.
Yes.
Stop badgering me. Okay, so I'm just going to run through some facts here because I just use the facts. That's how I operate.
I thought I just did that.
The jury has to make a decision, or the judge in this case.
Yeah, I'm the judge.
Just based on information, okay? Not speculation, not nonsense.
Let's hear it.
David Montgomery, last year's receiving line, 16 catches, 117 yards, 0 touchdowns. He had a terrific rushing line, including 13 rushing touchdowns. But check this out, 38th in snaps, 22nd in touches and yards, but 4th in touchdowns. That does not add up. That's not sustainable going forward. How about where's the upside? 1 career season better than RB15. That was way back in 2020. So the upside's lacking there from a guy you're taking in the 7th round. And 0 16-plus point fantasy games after week 11 last season when we saw more Jahmyr Gibbs. There's just no upside. He has insurance value, but this is not a guy you feel good about starting. Best case scenario, he's like a fringe RB2 with limited upside. No thanks.
All right, I'm going to give the win to Daniel. You know why? Because what I am aiming for in David Montgomery is not some like major upside play.
I agree with that.
He is ranked right now in what Mike has, I think, appropriately named the running back dead zone, right? It's just kind of like a bunch of uninspiring options. I'm going to bank on the player who plays in the best offense amongst a lot of those backs that we are talking about, right? It's like the Ramondre Stevenson, James Conner, David Montgomery, maybe the 2 Pittsburgh backs, maybe the 2 Titans backs.
Brooks, yep.
Yeah. All right. It sounds like you're trying to settle the case. I'm trying to win fantasy championship, so I'll aim higher.
Well, I would never let you go 3-1. So the answer is Daniel.
That's it. That's
Daniel
it.
wins.
Bam. All right. Court is now over.
Adjourned.
Oh, that's the word. Thank
No,
you.
say
Yeah,
adjourned.
court is
Court is
adjourned.
over.
Yeah,
Court is over.
That's
Can't get your facts right, your terms right. I said words like objection and
Fantasy Focus has been adjourned.
Badgering.
Wait, what?
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we are talking about our toughest players to rank for the 2024 season.